Okay, real quick, let's talk about boxing. Okay, when people think of boxing, obviously, probably most people don't know if you ask them what are the origins of boxing. Well, boxing was done in the ancient world, particularly amongst the Greeks, uh, and uh, and the Persians did it as well as some others. Can you talk about ancient boxing? Let's talk about what it looked like and what were the metaphysics behind it. Why was it done when everybody had bladed weapons?
Uh, Historically, boxing never appears until the chariot.
Okay.
Um, in Mesopotamia, it is associated with ritual music with an Elisu drum. Uh, in Egypt, it's associated with stick fighting, and in Knossos and other Cretan places like Thera, it is seems to be associated with religious and kingship rituals and have many different forms from bare knuckle to armored um, boxing. We don't know how those were conducted. When boxing reappears in later times, it's associated with dueling with small shields, whether it's in northern Italy or England, which were the two places where it came back into being. When it shows up outside of Aryan influence, it's only been seen on two Pacific islands and on Okinawan tea, which means Okinawan hand. Uh, it's it's important to people who uh, practice uh, small shield dueling. And I think the reason why it occurs only after the chariot is introduced is the chariot permitted dueling as a war activity by the elite. Uh, a rich guy that could afford armor like a knight before the age when horses were big enough to be ridden into battle, he could be transported by a taxi pulled by a couple of small horses, a chariot, to a spot where he could then fight, where the ordinary foot soldiers got to slog along and carry his big shield.
Yeah.
He can't practically wear a lot of armor until steel armor is developed. It's more ergonomic, like what the Roman legionnaires used in later times. So the with a smaller shield, you can punch with the shield. It's not as passive as the big shield. Ritual dueling amongst the Romans usually featured a warrior with a small shield and a longer sword against a type of gladiator with a larger shield and a smaller sword. So this difference was recognized as a very interesting dueling situation all the way into late antiquity. The the Greeks had a heavily ritualized type of boxing that we could talk about in a later video and get into the rules
Right.
and the way it was conducted and everything. But we don't know what the rules were for these other forms of boxing in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Crete. There's an interesting artifact called the Bowl of Hansanlu from 1100 BC, over 3,000 years ago, that depicts a kingly looking man boxing what appears to be a god in a chariot, who's also boxing him back.
I think I saw that.
And the chariot seems to be propelled by like an alligator or something like that. So it is most likely associated with kingship rituals there and Crete, but we're not certain. It seemed to have been more in Egypt, something that soldiers did along with practicing stick fighting.
So now just real quick. I remember in your first book, which I read, Jesus Christ, 20 something years ago, you had mentioned that in terms of boxing, the closed fist is not a natural thing by itself. Obviously, we've grown up with, the idea of like closing your fists, but pretty much the closed fist is something that you would hold something in. So it's kind of mimicking holding a weapon or some kind of object, but not actually having it. But the percussive quality of that closed fist, that boxed shaped fist, is sort of, I mean, that's like the ultimate primal thing of that, right? You'd say of boxing.
I would have to guess that probably the first punch that was thrown was some caveman reaching for a stone to knock in another guy's head and missing the stone. Okay, and then just like hitting him with what he had.
Yeah.
That's probably, there's one record of I think a chimp or a monkey punching a baboon that some zoologist saw, and there's only one record of a Stone Age person throwing a punch against a European, and it was when Hernan de Soto was punched by a Timucun Indian. I think Timucun was the tribe. It might have been the Tallahassee tribe or something, but it's punching people is extremely unusual outside of the experience of the Aryan nomad warriors and certain islanders.
And of course, you got the Chinese stuff, right? You got the
well, the Chinese stuff does not show up until after the chariot, and that chariot technology was brought to China by the Aryans.
That is true.
And Kung Fu itself shows up under influence from India.
Yeah.
That would be Buddhist influence, and this activity of boxing was found by Alexander the Great's men as being practiced by local Aryan warriors against each other when they got to India. So it doesn't have to have come from the Indians to China after the Greeks brought it to India. It seems like the Indian Aryans already had their own indigenous form of boxing, or possibly pancratian, that at a later date ends up going to China. It's the Japanese discussed themselves whether or not Okinawan tea was indigenous or whether it came from China. I have no idea.
All right. Just get you know me. I'm a Chinese shill, so I have to put a little, my future bosses. I gotta put a little thing in for them, Oh, all right, later.